Hello
Good.
there.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Nicole.
Hey, Stephanie.
Stephanie, January. Good afternoon, early evening, depending upon where you're calling in from. I imagine that as we get started today, we will have a few more people kind of coming in and joining us. At the start of our time together, I did want to acknowledge that this is one of our open house sessions for the lab, which means that there is the possibility that we could have some people joining us who are here to learn a little bit more about the community. So there might be questions or a breakout room related to that at some point. We might just spend a little bit of time explaining the front end structure around checking in and how the breakout rooms are formed. If you notice, we're spending a little bit more time on that today. It will be in service of folks who might not have been in this space before. So welcome. Hi, Karen.
Hi. Hey, everybody. Great to see each of you.
Yeah. You know, Karen, something I've always meant to tell you the last few weeks, the spiral votive holder that you have on the back wall. Years ago, I had the exact same one and I loved it so much. And every time I see it on your wall, I'm like, I wonder what happened to mine. Like
I took it. I'm sorry.
Karen snuck in one night.
It's sitting in storage somewhere along my path of life, but it is beautiful. And
That's
So
cool. Yeah.
heart filled whenever I see it. So
I like that. Thank you. Jeff also in our community, he walked me down the hall one day and said he has the same thing. So I think clearly it has like mine. I'm hoping there's a halo effect too. So.
Very much so. Very much so. Well, welcome everyone. Just to get us started with a little check-in on where you find yourself today, or how you find yourself as you're arriving into the lab space.
Well, I'm buzzing.
What kind of buzzing, Karen?
I probably should use a different word. Not that kind of buzzing. Yeah, about an hour ago, I got off the phone. Emily, you know this person. So I called Lynette Fields, who is the founder of Poverty Solutions Group. And after some processing of my own and trying to figure out, okay, what is this what's forming here? I reached out to her and asked her how they were fulfilling a particular space that I was seeing there was a need for. And we had about an hour and a half conversation, and it's really exciting. There's possibilities different than I imagined that came out, and she referred me to, there's a community that I've caught hints of. Emily may even know of them, creating a resilient community in Central Florida. And they have a lot of cross sectors. She said 7 to 10 sectors, including police, legal system, healthcare. And they have open days where people come in and can share what they're doing, as well as connect with other people. And she invited me into that space. And so it's very exciting. That's the buzz. Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah. And it felt really good to be able to say why I was calling. I'll add that. Often I've had conversations with her, but it was more listening rather than there's something here. And so we hung up confirming with each other, there's something. We don't know what it is yet, but there's something. So we're going to allow that to emerge.
Beautiful, Karen.
I was struggling to find a word, and I think roadblock is the one that kind of represents where I am. I tend to overthink things, and I've been taking my current experience and trying to apply what David's sharing, and I'm about 30 pages into the book, so I have a lot more to go, but I just feel roadblocked. So good, more people are coming.
Yeah. Hey, Abigail. And Michelle.
Mhm.
Do you have a sense about these roadblocks, January?
Oh, I maybe this is helpful. My whole life, our career has really been involved with serving children and families, sometimes in nonprofit organizations. And then I created my own business 17 years ago, facilitation, and it's about strategic planning. So I'm coming up against this goal concept, which I totally get. I totally get where you are. But if you're trying to collaborate with different entities who are coming from different perspectives, I'm caught in, so what is this scaffolding? So I won't go any further. I could spend hours. So.
Well, in January, I'd be happy to give you some time at some point. Back in the day when I used to live in Oregon before, I did a lot of projects in the child services space using ID. Narrative coaching, some, but mostly ID. And so I'd be happy to share with you, or maybe Emily will entice me to come do a case study at some point about that, because it can be done, but it is a very different mindset for participants who often come from a place of scarcity and fear, I found. Yeah.
Got it.
And in some ways, rightfully so, but and there was an invitation to imagine something else. Yeah.
David, what does ID stand for?
Integrative development. So it's the body of work I created, sort of try to understand. I kept being asked to scale narrative coaching in organizations, particularly around change and conversations around change. And then in that, I found that I was, the projects that were really successful, I was released from any category that I had to operate in. I could just be David and move around and change roles, often many times during one day. So I was able to help them solve a lot of, in a variety of different projects, a lot of issues by taking a sort of a non-silo based perspective on what was happening. So it's now evolved into this intact learning and development theory that actually sits in narrative coaching. So the narrative coaches will recognize it right straight away, but it has a lot of new language and new theory and trying to help us free ourselves from curriculum, agendas, all kinds of things to actually just be in what we call structured emergence. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And I want to welcome Jessica. There she is. You're on mute, Jessica.
Sorry about that. I was muted. Sorry, I'm late. I was having Zoom trouble.
That's right. You're here exactly on time.
Not really, but okay. I'm excited to be here. It's my first time, and I found you on the WBEX full summit and fell in love with you and narrative coaching. So did a little digging and I made it here.
Great.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. Welcome. You have landed in the Threshold Lab open house session. So once a month, we open the doors into the lab and invite folks in just to get a feel for the space and the community that gathers here pretty regularly. There are multiple facets to the lab. One of them being these regular Monday member meetups, but we also exist in a digital space, an online learning community on a platform called Circle that allows us to interact and collaborate virtually and to host other meetups and other conversations outside of this Monday time. So the general flow of these sessions is such that as we come in, we're just saying hello and doing a quick check-in to say, how are you as you arrive today? Where do you find yourself? And as we listen and sit here together, it seems that conversation topics emerge, needs or requests emerge in the sharing, and then that really steers how we spend the bulk of the time in this session. So we like to imagine the lab a little bit like a lobby to a grander meeting space that allows us to all come into the same place, say hello, catch up, and then based upon our interest or needs, we can kind of congeal or come together in smaller breakout rooms or conversations as needed to serve why we came here today.
Beautiful. So did you want me to start and tell you?
I mean, if you feel so moved, but it's not compulsory. I'll follow the group and see what, and come back in later if that's okay. Absolutely. Thank you for the explanation.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So anybody else want to check in for today?
So I'd like to share. I just prematurely left a call to be here because I knew this would be really amazing. But the conversation was really fascinating, and I think it sits with some of the things we've talked about so far. And that is, what's the connection of the mind to the brain? It's a neuroscience class. And so it's, as a neuroscientist, the instructor's like, well, it's your brain, and I'm not sure I can go down the mindfulness path and consciousness and it's very specifically around, it's not one part of your brain that controls things like leadership. And so as we sit with these conversations, how do we as practitioners hold space for people's minds and that consciousness and subconsciousness? So it's an interesting jump between the two, and noticing what comes up.
I'm going to do a normal good morning check-in. It's if you don't know me, I'm from Sydney, so it's morning here, and I just kept hitting the alarm. And I thought to myself, I could keep hitting the alarm. However, every time I come to one of these sessions, things come through. I just jumped out of bed. I'm a little bit late because of the alarm clicking. So it's good to see everyone here. I just wanted to say hi.
I'll check in and say hello. As some of you know, I'm in the midst of a big leap of faith transitionary period in my life. And I recently, as recent as like the last 24 hours, realized how much anxiety I was holding about it all. And that it was really doing me in head and body and everything. And so I just, decided there's going to be fear, but I'm going to let the anxiety part of it go and just see what comes. And so that has felt a little bit better, but probably only 12 hours into it. So we'll see how that goes. But I don't know. Are we at the point, Emily, where we're putting out there what we would like to do today, or just to check?
No,
All right.
This is a beautiful transition.
Okay. So I can
Absolutely
throw that out there. All right. So what I would love is any insights or advice or experience from people who have created their own kind of business, whether it is coaching and consulting, which is closest to what I'm endeavoring to do, or just something along those lines. Just, how did they get started? How did the process kind of unfold for them? And just so I can get a little bit of insights as I work through my process now. That would be great.
I have made a note of that, and we'll have a breakout room to attend to that. My note says BYOB, which stands for Build Your Own Business. Oh, and anybody else? What do you need most today for yourself or from yourself, from this community? Is there anything that you want to offer, a conversation that you want to host?
I just wanted to actually, now that I'm waking up, I remember it must have been about 4 o'clock this morning, and things were popping in about the word control. And specifically to certain words, you attempt to change your narrative, yet some other words constantly take over. And so what's that thought of controlling those words? And also, as I was listening to yourself, Stephanie and January, I got this sense of, it's not just the control, it's looking at the different layers of movement within. And I was coaching a young girl the other day, 20-year-old, and as I was her witness and just witnessing the different levels, and I was just curious, just watching it in real life. And I know we're coaches in that, and I'm new to it in the sense. Yet it's just amazing having a conversation like this now. Yet it was in the field as I was being with somebody. That's just all I wanted to share.
And is there something deeper there, Michelle, that you want to continue a conversation about, or?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, it just came into the room, so I thought I'll just share.
Okay.
Jessica.
Thanks. I guess I'll just participate the first time in. So I'm struggling with the conflict between the conversation that we had in the IM group after your WBEX presentation. I don't actually remember what IM stands for. And intellectual mastery or something like that.
Integration and mastery or something like that.
Yeah, it was like, it's a breakout group after each session. And the big topic of conversation in it was, there were like 6 of us maybe, and I think 4 were primarily focused on working with tech executives who are not especially good at sharing personal stories. And according to that, this is their story, their explanation, and not very long-winded. So, and not in the mood to be very vulnerable. So I'm sort of looking at that dynamic and looking at it in terms of, their really strong feeling that in a business, and it's funny because the person you did the demo with was certainly a business person, but they're pushing back that in a business setting, it's hard to have a long enough conversation in narrative coaching to get somewhere. And at the same time, I'm working on storytelling with I'm launching a new program Wednesday, actually, that's going to be kind of big around storytelling and using storytelling, excuse me, connected with coaching to, I don't know if anybody's read Life is in the Transitions, Bruce Feiler's work. And just in that direction of let's use stories, lengthy discussion, narrative coaching sort of stories to talk about moving forward and, drawing out what's good in life and leading. I'm doing some work with some older people and about joyful aging and that kind of stuff. So I'm sort of torn. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on, so that this dynamic between how do you use narrative coaching and these longer stories with my business clients. It's kind of the fuzzy space I'm thinking of.
Yeah. My short answer is you don't, in a way. Many of my tech clients don't have the patience for long stories, even though they tell lots of them themselves, but they're not aware that they're doing that. And it just means you have to be much more focused on what you ask them. And so even the smallest of stories can be quite impactful for them. And so, I've, because people have a notion of narrative coaching is you sort of just sit back and let people tell stories and then things magically happen. Well, it doesn't really work like that. And so I've coached in tech spaces for 20 years and I've never, except on very rare occasions, had difficulty with a client. And many of them find it actually refreshing if you position it well so they feel safe, because it's so unlike everything else in their day. Yeah. So for me, when people say, well, you can't use this in certain spaces, I just invite people to reframe it as, I don't know how to use it in different spaces. It's a much more accurate statement. Yeah.
I'd like to add things. I actually worked in the tech world I look young, though I shouldn't be after all those years. From my experience, and I wasn't even a coach yet, I just lived that entire world. To me, my perspective is straight away, they wear armor. So even with the conversation of the armor, or when that's what they're wearing, the interesting thing about them, and I know a lot, is that when I see them on socials, which is just themselves, the 2 different lives that they live.
Mm-hmm.
And because now I'm watching them all from afar, both different lives, the story, as David actually says, starting small just is that peel of the armor. because when you're having it in the place that they have the armor on, even, I can see where there's a lot of loggerheading trying to reveal a story. Yeah, that's just one perspective. Yeah.
And most of my work, Michelle, was helping them unite the two halves of themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know.
And you're living proof that it works.
I'm a student. Yeah.
Mm. Mm.
I think taking the phrase work-life balance and removing that, and it's just life.
Mhm.
That's where those two personas come together.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
So David, how did you hear the breakout room shaping up for today? What are you thinking?
Well, I like our idea that we had before the call of maybe having you stay on and do one breakout around your case study. That way we can record that so it can go up on Circle for others. And well, and I'll just put out my one framing and see if that picks up enough of you. And if not, we'll do something else. But you know, I think there's a question around how do we you know, maybe building on Michelle's word around control, like how do we like come alongside clients these days? How do we find ways to engage them? So I hear that in, you know, your story, January, about how do I get these people that are very goal oriented to think about strategy differently? I think about Nicole, you like, how do I enter this market in a new way myself as a sole proprietor? Michelle is fascinated about control, and even, you know, some of your questions, Jessica, are how do we be with this work in the kind of spaces we operate in? And so I think rather than, I guess one of the ways I would hold this is as a circle, not a, we're going to now help this person or do this one specific thing, but let each person sort of throw their pieces into the circle and see what starts to emerge about insights you can gain from each other.
Can I ask a question?
You may.
Is it possible to stay together because there's such a rich body of what you just laid out, but at the same time, I don't want to miss Emily's case, which I don't know what it is.
Well, David, I would be happy to, you know, I can reconvene with the case, and we can do that in a separate space. And
Okay.
maybe it's something that we can do outside of normal lab hours, but, you know, share it as an opportunity for people who'd like to join.
All right. And then you can even answer this. So you could even answer those questions for yourself around your case, just to bring little bits of it into the thread.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Emily, will we be able to participate in your case discussion?
I will make sure that you have the information related to it. I believe that you found your way here by registering for this session today. And in doing so, that means we have your email address and we can follow up with you.
Super, thank you.
Yeah. And one of our hopes is this will be the first of many, many case stories that we hear from our members who are doing things. This is a way to show our members and guests kind of what people are doing with the work. And yeah.
And now I'm really, really curious. So can you at least just tell us what the case study,
I will do this.
even if you don't discuss it?
Here's a preview for you all. I'm going to drop it in the chat. It's a link to a web page that I've built to tell the story. It's an event portrait. This was a project that I engaged in with another ID grad who went through the program with me last year. We collaborated with several colleagues to host a very ID type event that was purposeful, intentional, and geared toward fostering connection across a university that had lost a lot of culture and community throughout the pandemic. And so the idea was how to bring people back into a place of wholeness and inspiration and re-engagement with what they felt was theirs to do in the space, and to come back as people and not just as employees, but to be able to share fully what the experience of the last couple of years have been like, and how we've navigated it differently and together.
Yeah, and then just for Abigail, for you and Jessica, who are new to this, so we've embarked on a very sort of structured, if you will, pilot of this between now and the end of the year. So every week, Emily and I meet and we sort of debrief what feature do we want to add this week, where are we at with Circle, and there, by the time we get to the end of the year and things really become more formalized in a way, our programs will be offered through the lab structure next year. So students and graduates will have a chance to interact. We'll have some specific things that we offer in the lab as standards. Some will be by us, some will be led by members. For example, how to build a business using this work would be one of them, and we'll create a library of resources. So this is all, we're on a very sort of diligent but kind to ourselves process to grow the lab over these coming months. And part of these, the value, particularly of the open houses, is to see what attracts people. Like, what are you interested in? What do you need? What are you not finding that you really would like to support yourself? And we will start to weave many of those elements into the lab as it unfolds over the coming months. Yeah. Yeah, great. All right. So Emily, we're going to stay in this room and we'll continue the recording. Is that?
Yeah, I think that sounds serving of everything that everyone has brought in today.
So I'm thinking about how we want to frame this to make sure that it feels reasonably inclusive. So I'll put out a question as a sort of a straw person question and see if this matches, and if not, we'll tweak it or edit or throw it out and start with another one. But what I'm curious about is with these different scenarios that many of you have presented, what is the dilemma in yourself that you're wrestling with? As you think about what many of you described around what's happening for you. And obviously there are going to be many layers and lots of nuances, but just what is one of the frames you think about in terms of the dilemma within yourself?
I can share one that I had this afternoon before I called Lynette. And for those of you who joined later, I called somebody who I've known for a while and had some ideas about how I might integrate within work she was already doing and some clear concepts and yet questions. And I had a moment of, how do I approach that conversation? And the dilemma within me was, okay, what is the approach that would best fit? And I was excited about the ideas I was coming up with, and having been through ID and some other things, I thought, well, what do I know? What don't I know? And there was a lot more that I don't know. And I barely knew what I knew, and knew that that was going to change even. And so I intentionally had a moment of saying, I started out the conversation where I asked Lynette, how are you doing this with what work you're doing? And I named the it, and she proceeded to fill me in on everything. And she said, actually, we're connecting dots, and those are the dots in betweens we haven't connected. And by listening to her fully, and then she circled back and asked me, more specifically about what I was talking about. And that informed me more about how, this conversation might go. But the dilemma was, and I use the word control, Michelle, that you put out there. There is nothing to control here, is what I came, not using that language in my head. And also I didn't want to become attached to anything that happened in the conversation either, that it remained very open. We closed with that we just agreed there was something, but I released her from any obligation to make something work for me and vice versa. And so I noticed about, a quarter of the way into the conversation that I was very grateful that I had not chosen control or trying to convince herself something, which I had that moment of temptation. January, you're on mute.
You said there were three things, and that really connected. It was like I see where I want to go, but I don't know how to get there. So when you said like three things, I thought, so that helped. Thank you.
I can share within the subframe of my case story here to say that when I put my name on the spreadsheet for having a share here in the lab, it both gave me some excitement and a bit of anxiety. It felt like putting myself on the hook for something that I've wanted to find words for, and in some ways put a bow on an experience. But it has just kind of continued to grow, as has my own understanding of it as an event, as a moment in time, and continuing to see layers and layers of impact unfold around the event. So it's not that I've hesitated in telling this story before, it's just that it feels like the story is constantly changing. And that's been a little bit of my dilemma, is trying to find just the right words to tell the story, but the story keeps evolving. And what you said this morning, David, around positioning these case stories or what we share here, and likening it to stepping into a river. That it is a moment and it is an experience of how it unfolds with the words that it unfolds with today, and the way and the manner and the emotion and the audience that's here, and not a prescribed combination of sentences that I relay every time in the same way. And so that, my dilemma that I was facing around this was just not wanting to bring something that didn't feel fully formed, or like an articulation of something that had meaning or value, or even knowing that this is one of the case stories, the first ones that we're bringing into the lab, into this space, knowing that knowing and wanting to see and feel how the process itself is its own reward and its own developmental opportunity for me. Even just examining my own self, my motivations, my hangups, my dilemmas, if you will, in putting this together has been interesting. And I think, where I've come to around it, and it's probably something that I'll need reminders of, time and time again, is that the story that I tell here or there is the story, and that it's okay if it changes or evolves or has a prequel or a sequel as needed in a particular space.
Mm. I can share one of my dilemmas. So working with two business schools in a different country to put together a visit to come do some work for them and in their country around narrative coaching. And I'm observing that a fair bit of our time and our conversations is translating what I do and what they want into language that leaders at their business school would understand. And these are very different worlds. And it got me thinking, so my daughter's, I have a daughter who's almost 21. She's not too far off from the point in my mother's life when I was born. And, you know, thinking about how that story about my mother has changed watching my daughter be this age and imagining her having a child. And obviously it's a different era, they're different people, but it goes back to what you were saying before, Emily, about our clients want us to work in a Cartesian world. And stories and reality don't map to that. And so one of the things I spent a lot of time doing government projects, and they want lots of reports. As if the report was some kind of fixed analysis of here's the truth or here's the reality. And I just think that life's a successive series of unfolding awarenesses about our stories. And so I'm always asking my clients, even like for someone like you, Nicole, starting out, that there is no final report I can give you. There is no expert analysis that will solve all your problems. I can just give you some awareness right now of the stories that are in play and what sense I can make of them and what you might do about them. Yeah, and my dilemma was prompted by thinking about these business schools is how do we preserve the integrity of the work? It's always the dilemma in this work. How do we preserve the integrity of the work and translate it into language others might understand without losing the plot? Because what we offer the business school is not the reality of what we're doing. It's the reality of the language they'll understand, so they'll support us. And then we have to, so we're always translating. And so the dilemma is how much effort do I want to put into translating? And yeah, and how to help others organize themselves so they can get what they need without losing their soul in the middle of trying to navigate some of those environments. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to do something that's a little, you can all tell me to stop if it's too much, but what's coming, yes, what's coming up for me is there's a path and it might be a straight line. We all sort of want that nice linear progression. Sometimes it's exponential, sometimes it's all over the place, but it's a, to your point, David, Cartesian. So you have a y-axis that's got something in value and time, and you have this line, and we're all so fixed on what point am I in that line. And I just wonder, because I had this conversation with a person who's very much a technologist, who's a coach, and when I was using coaching terminology, he just kind of, oh, you don't say that with your clients, do you? And I'm like, no. But as you know, as contemporaries, I think it's fascinating to see what models you use versus models that I might apply. So what if instead of saying we've got this path and we're in a particular point on this path, we think about you integrate under the curve, the area. So when you create a line, it's actually the representation of the area completely underneath the space. And so you have all the opportunity to play below the line. And to your stories, what might have been important at the beginning is still a component in the as you move out into the future. And so you can kind of play with what's under the curve that's telling you about the path. It's a little weird, and it's, you know, I'm thinking of my, you know, my many years of calculus and, you know, differential equations. So I apologize if this is off the wall, but I just think that it's the, you know, Jessica, to your point, joyful is a word I love. Ease, grace, and joy. And as a technologist, that ability to be playful and to say to someone, play underneath the curve. You understand that you're integrating, and you've got this beautiful space that no one seems to ever want to jump off that top. That's my story.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's good.
Stephanie, what that makes, so that was lovely, Stephanie. To me, what that makes me think about is being in the moment versus having a goal, an endpoint. And that we're always, at least in a business setting, we're often going somewhere, as opposed to what if we could just appreciate the moment we're in? Or what could we collectively get out of this experience that contributes to our, I don't know if you're going to use soul in a business setting, but maybe that contributes to our well-being, that contributes to our ability to work well together. It's about the experience in the moment as opposed to where we're going. That's what I'm thinking.
I was using this morning, Abigail, I was using the example of every year when we run our Aboriginal Leadership Program in Australia, I have to make a final report. And the first couple of years, I would just agonize. So we have like 1,500 hours of human interaction time. We've got all these different layers of what's going on. We've got last time we had 35 participants from 35 different communities and 35 different sets of stories. And I used to just agonize about how to prepare this report because I thought I had to capture everything, or at least the essence of everything. And then I fundamentally realized the only real purpose of the report was to show credible progress so that they would get more money. So I thought, well, that solves that problem. So the report writing became much simpler. We just put up all the evidence points about show that work, and underneath your point, Stephanie, underneath that sort of the C underneath that line was all the stories of all of the participants, which we also then added to the report, but we didn't have to prove anything with them. They were just there as a repository. And then we had the lived experience of everybody underneath, and all the side conversations and all the transformed lives that didn't make it into the report at all, but were actually the juice of the whole thing. And so I think a lot of it, again, is just figuring out these different levels you have to work on. Where's the efficient use of our time? And what's really the work that's actually being done. So, yeah.
Jessica, I see you signaling.
Yeah, I just wanted to add 2 words that popped to mind that fit into this, of being in a space that's not visible, like behind the scenes, not transparent, not in, and expectations that if you're under the line in a space that's not being reported and you can be more authentic, you're ignoring and able to ignore the expectations of outsiders and hopefully yourself as well.
Yeah, great.
I have this visual sitting on my bookcase that's just looking. But it's actually there a gourd that's cut. It's half. But it reminds me of the playing on it, all the beauty of, or all the intricacies of what's under the arc or the curve, you might say. The neat little staring at me.
Sort of the magic of a geode.
Yeah.
It is yeah, exactly. The magic, but the inside of the geode. Yeah.
Abigail, you had your hand up
About,
before. Yeah.
Well, I was just y'all will tell me whether this is relevant. I was thinking about being versus doing. And I don't know if what you're offering to the business schools is about leadership development, for example. So a question I would have for people is, how do you think you influence people? And what is it about you that gains you influence? And so, and I don't know if the world divides into two types of people or two sort of primary concerns in the world, that we get ahead by our achievements and doing versus that we get ahead by being who we are. But I do think that the way that we gain influence is about our being. And so I think of a question about how do you think you influence people? What is it about you? I mean, it's that self-exploration. I don't know if that's connected to what you're offering to the business schools, but it just occurred to me. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you what I'm not offering them is leadership development, because I'm not sure I believe in that anymore. They're trying to find a frame to understand a country that's still in crisis, and what is the role of the business school in that process. And it's not that uncommon in human nature. The businesses and at least their story about this is that the businesses in South Africa are doubling down on autocracy and control and conformity in the face of anxiety, which is the exact opposite of what they need to be doing in a way. And so so I said, well, anyway, so we're exploring what could we do together that would hold space for something else. And so they're all running around trying to figure out what that might look like. And then we'll meet again next week.
I love that question, that field of inquiry. I spend a lot of time in that field thinking about autocracy. Would you mind repeating? I heard autocracy, control, and something in the face of something. Anxiety. Can you say that?
So it's autocracy, control, and conformity in the face of unrelenting anxiety. And I think another one of the dilemmas that arises for me as I think about this and hear your question, Abigail, is the tension between how much do you invite people into other possibilities and how much do you acknowledge exactly where they are right now. And both require courage to be truthful about what's happening right now, as well as what could we do instead. And I feel like we're in this space where no one really knows. And so we need new processes, to me, that allow us to imagine new ways of being together. And that's challenging for people because they come with very short-term problems they'd really like it if you could fix.
David,
Yeah.
in your framing the question about, I think you said something like, how can we help people be truthful about, or how can we be truthful about what's happening now versus inviting people into the space of envisioning or imagining a future?
Right.
If that sounds like either or framing to me.
No, there's just two examples. I'm not saying it's either or. I'm just saying they both require courage. And there's a tension between those two, which the people then do teeter-totter, and as opposed to finding another way forward. But Yeah, and I think we started this talking about dilemmas. So part of the dilemma is keeping people in their world enough so they feel safe and comfortable and will meet you and feel recognized and seen and heard, while recognizing that often their frame of their current world is part of their problem. And so inviting them to look at their worlds differently as one other path they could be taking. So peek below the line, below the curve. Like you open up that little trap door and say, stick your hand down in the ocean underneath, and what do you see? And what do you feel? And what becomes possible then? So.
Nicole, I wanted to acknowledge, I think I saw you popping in there.
Thanks, Emily. Yeah. I didn't want to get in the middle of the wonderful conversations that were happening, especially in light of, because my question is kind of seemingly the antithesis of what you're all talking about, which is it could appear more as goal-oriented in terms of something that I'm looking to do. And, January, you had said, I know where I want to go, but don't know how to get there, that whole thing. And that is the story that I'm in right now.
Yeah.
And sorry, the emotion, I don't mean it, but, it's been a very intense story for me, with the underlying aspect of this fear that that I don't know what to do, and that I'm going to fail at it because I don't know what I'm doing, which is imposter syndrome. And I understand the nature of the stories underneath it and why they're generating the emotion that they are, because the other story I always carry in this process, or in any process, is that I used to not be able to ask for help, and always carried the story that people didn't want to help me anyway. And so I've learned recently to ask for what I need, and I'm often still experiencing asking for what I need and then having it either be deemed not that important or it just doesn't seem to work out. So I'm in a process right now of this huge transition, and really wanting to hear how other people have done it, so I can hear their stories, so that I can then create my own story, perhaps, not a prescriptive, list of these are the things you need to do, but more, I don't know how to make the transition from I was a classroom teacher, I can relate to the reports you were talking about, David, because narrative report card writing is very much like that. The parents just want to know, is Johnny failing? Are they gonna be okay? And so you basically have to kind of say that, and then give the anecdotal, of how Johnny feels about how he's doing, or how I feel about how they're doing. And that's really the whole purpose of those in the first place. But right now I'm taking a huge leap of faith, and there's fear underneath that of, did I make a stupid decision? So in order to move to the next thing, I feel like for a year or two, I've just been asking people for, how do I do it? And so there is goal there, and there's lots of stories underneath that surface. But even just hearing how other people have done it, how did they take the first step to call themselves a coach or consultant? How did they find clients? How did they figure out what to charge? I feel like I keep pulling numbers out of my behind and just like throwing it at people and saying, well, you pay me for that, And so, I'm working on a business plan. I'm working on all of those sorts of things. I don't really understand them, and they don't make sense to me because it's not how I operate normally. But that's, I feel like I'm perpetually asking in all aspects of my life for what I perceive I need. And maybe it's that I don't
actually need those things, and that's why they're not showing up. That's also possible. But it's keeping me in a point of stress that I keep trying to let go of. So again, I apologize for my emotion in this. And, you know, I know we're not breaking out into breakout groups where someone may or may not be willing to kind of tell me their story, and we have a lot of other things that we're sharing and all of that. But anyway, that's where I'm at right now. So sorry.
I'd like to say I honor you, Nicole, for sharing, because I feel like I've sat in your seat. And I was actually sitting in your seat with you, because I feel I know exactly in my own situation. Just this conversation today myself just even reaffirms the direction of what is it that I'm meant to do. And it's interesting as I'm listening to you all about the word I use, I've shared with it, is called an undercurrent. And I used to try and think about the undercurrent in only one way. I thought there's only a certain type of undercurrent. However, I'm realizing that there's many layers of undercurrent. So inspired by Karen just sharing that rock of the different layers. And what came into the room for me just then was, have I been here before in this undercurrent? Knowing everything else that's happening above, have I been here before? Is this a new undercurrent? A different kind of water? It's green instead of blue. And I suppose for me in my situation, I get caught because I love living in a noisy, crazy, challenging world. And I love sitting in a pausing, still, silent world. So is my undercurrent this way, not this way? So it's kind of like this dance of trying to work through who I am. However, what I was just inspired by yourself, Nicole, because I actually feel like now I'm thinking I'm not in undercurrent. So I put myself there because of all the stories that actually are told. This is what just came through, is I'm like a hover. So I'm hovering above, not underneath. And that dropped into me because I just realized, supporting my husband with cancer, transitioning from a suit to sweatpants, I'll call it, which was real, back to not even knowing what kind of attire I'm going to wear. Maybe it's whatever it is. However, just me hovering just then released me. So I don't know what that means. And my dilemma was, I think I was caught in an undercurrent. And I think I just put myself there. So now I'm not there now. And I suppose I wrote the words, let the cards fall where they may. Now, if I want to say my word that came into the room of control, David, when I first came through here, 3 o'clock in the morning, if I hover and let the cards fall where they may, I believe I'll become a lot clearer about what to do next. Anyway, oops. I'd love to chat with you, Nicole, as well. Absolutely.
Mm. 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 And for Nicole, I will continue my conversations with Emily about how to keep moving along our vision for how do we offer things like this within our community space. And so we've been talking briefly, which we'll talk more about. And there's I'm not sure who hosts this, but in the coaching space, there's this thing called Reciprocoach, where peers coach each other. And we may be able to put something like that similarly, where there's others who are, for different reasons than you maybe, but are in that similar space. And a lot of what you need is readily available. And if we could find somebody to help with that, maybe there's a way to give back to them to help do that for that small group of people. And make it more than just chatting. But I'll talk with Emily and we'll see if we can move some of that forward. Yeah.
You know, and as I hear it, and David, as you say, more than, chatting, I'm wondering, is it, does it maybe take the shape of something like, collaborative website reviews, or messaging and branding workshops together, or clarifying your offer, clarifying, how it is that you're speaking about your services, or who you're seeking to do work with. Just kind of understanding more fully what the need is around those different aspects of creating an identity around the work that you want to do.
It wouldn't be that hard to put together something around like the 10 first things you need to decide in starting your own business. And how much do I charge? What do I call myself? Do I need a website? And to begin to create a platform for people to do that, explore that together. Yeah, and let's work on that. And I think that also then feeds into a broader conversation about, in these times, how do we need to adapt what we call ourselves and how we get paid? And I mean, I was having this conversation with another person I would see as a thought leader as well, and we were both sharing we live in a time of extraordinary unknown. Does the world actually need any more thought leaders? Answer is no. So then how do you get paid more to not be a thought leader? And are you an unthought leader? Yeah, so I think it's, yeah.
David, you've said so many times about how things are different. And I started a business 17 years ago, and I'm transitioning to a new offering. And it's different. It's so different. Yeah. And so what is that conversation that allows, that allows it to happen?
Yeah.
I guess.
Which for me, January is, it's why I'm so passionate about the idea of the lab. Like, Nicole, I could help you answer all of your questions in an hour, but they would be answers I would have come up, but they would have become, but you're not me. And a lot of what I know about those questions are from another time, even 3 years ago. No one knows what we're doing. I mean, and so part of it is there are some basics. So I guess one of the ways that it might be helpful, Nicole, to start some of this is if thinking about what are the 10 questions I most need answers to. Even that's a start, narrowing the playing field. Like, what are the essential 10 things? And there's probably insights that all of us, because we all are in business some way or another right now. There's things we're observing. There's things we knew in the past, some of which may work and some may not. But I consider those more dialogical and collaborative because we're figuring them out, but we could at least help with the 10 questions and at least some footholds about how to get started.
There's a resource I'm thinking of, but I'll have to check it out because it's been a while, that is somebody who has been working with coaches for a long time with the kind of questions that you're asking. And I don't know where he's at currently, but I'll see if it seems relevant. And if it does, I'll post it in the lab.
Yeah.
Or if y'all want me to, if Emily and David, you want me to run it by you first, just to get your sense? That's fine too.
You're welcome to post it, Karen.
Okay. Yeah, and that person has a lot of, used to have a lot of tools that were just readily available. So if one of those questions was on there, you could just, he has years of experience collating that information for folks. I'll find that and see what works.
Abigail.
Thank you. Emily, I'm new to this space, so I'm not exactly sure what you offer or what the Moment Institute offers. But if part of your response to Nicole was about having a workshop on identifying your unique value, I've designed and facilitated that, and it is dialogic in the way that David was mentioned, and I'd be happy to do that for this community.
That's exactly how we want the lab to work.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Abigail. I mean, that is the type of thing that I was hoping to to get from the lab. And I mean, I signed up with a SCORE mentor. I don't know, Stephanie's the one who introduced SCORE to me. And again, that's limited to the nuts and bolts. Sent me a link to, here's a business plan, fill it out. And then, I said, but there's so much on here that I have no idea. I don't know what my revenue, I don't have revenue. Like, I don't know what, and so what I really need is someone who, and also people in different industries don't necessarily get what I do, and what I do is, it's different. I mean, I not different necessarily from all of you. You can relate to it, but which is why coming here and asking these questions here is where I would want to ask it, as opposed to my friend who owns a different type of business is not going to get it. The work I do with working with people's stories and being present in all the ways in which I could bring my background into what I'm doing. It's like, it's I don't know. Do I narrow it down? Do I offer everything I possibly have? Do I look at working one-on-one? Do I look at, trying to get to companies? I don't even know how to do that. I'm not exactly an influencer sort of person, nor do I ever want to be. So I don't want to do social media, but maybe I have to. There's so many aspects of it that I feel like I'm not setting up a normal traditional business in a sense. And yet there are elements of it that would be, and those I could Google. So it's not that. I mean, I could look up online what insurance I might need, or how to get a business license, or it's not that. It's the things I don't know about setting up a business, and a business that is at once working on, from a narrative perspective, from a self-awareness perspective, from a you're going to be, touching people's buttons, and I don't mean that in a weird way, but in a way that they're going to react, and so how do you design a business around that? And how do you put it out there, and how do you get clients? And so it's different. It's a combination of the basics, because I've never owned my own business. I've always worked for other people. And the one time that I tried to work for myself, I ended up very close to living in my car. So yeah, it was a Honda Element, so I was really lucky, but still it was, but I, you know, I'm much older now, not particularly wiser, and just need to have the structure or scaffolding around this leap of faith, and by people who get it, who get what I'm doing and don't think it's too weird or woo woo, or why would anyone need that? So yeah.
And I get the uncertainty of all that too. Live it every day.
Would you all mind if I excuse myself? Because I have a meeting that started at 7. I'm not sure how late this was planning to go.
It goes for until the 1/2 past, so another 13 minutes.
Would you mind if I excuse myself, everyone?
Thank you for all you shared, Abigail. I'll follow up with you in
Sure.
an email.
Thank you for including me. So nice to be in this space with you. Thank you.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It seems so often we talk about the importance of this kind of work coming out into the world, and today's what's just been shared. It just reminds me of how important it is to our worlds. And not just important, but in some ways it's everything. And the courage it takes to be with that.
And so I can feel the energy has shifted so much from what I've changed. So I would like to, I'm actually going to go, because I would like to be able to reopen the space to the other things that you all want to talk about. And I know that sounds weird, but I think
Nicole.
Yes.
Nicole, before you go, 17 years ago, I was fired and didn't know what I was going to do. So we're with you.
Thank you. Okay. Have a beautiful day.
You too, Nicole.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'll just add something. I mean, I think it's sort of a shame she left, because the conversation's important to everyone and interesting. We're all trying to do something that's very authentic and unique to us. And we understand that we're all very unique and being authentic, like that's not, people don't know that, right? Like we've figured that out.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard to know if you don't want to waste people's time. You don't want to, be, you don't want to lose confidence. You don't want to, there's so much, we all know where it's at. And that question of, even if you're, no matter how far you are along a business, I mean, you're going to question it, right? Like, is the next step is always hard. It's not, the beginning, she's not even at the beginning. Like she's figured out she wants to be in this business. She's got content. She's got, so like, it's a journey. And it's like, I don't know, anybody plays golf, but it's like every time I complain to my husband that I'm having a hard day or something, he's like, that's golf. And he's a really good golfer. And he comes home every day. He's like, today my woods aren't working. Today this isn't working, and it's the same thing. It's like, no matter where you are on a spectrum of life, like there's bumps and it's really about, in terms of running a program, it's not about, as she said, it's the stuff I don't know what to ask, not the obvious of how to do it. It's how do you do something unique? How do you feel good about it? How do you, I don't know what the right questions are, but like it's very nuanced. It's not as simple as Googling, how do I start a business?
That was one of my realizations, Abigail, Jessica, because actually a lot of what we were talking about actually is very relevant to what she's looking for, but she doesn't know that. And so she couldn't hear what we were saying because she thought she was waiting for something else that we weren't saying. But in reality, it was a lot of the same questions. Yeah.
And can I also share, I just had a moment, January, thank you for sharing in regards to as well, 17 years ago. And it wasn't the number, it was the moment when you're fired. And I was just sitting here and just even many stories being pinged to, yes, a long time ago, I had been fired when I was young. And I pinged my body there to find, is there peace there now? And then come ping myself back into the room again. And if there is, then I'm able to step forward. So I just had that moment in just that share, and it was the same thing when Nicole was sharing. I don't know what that means yet. It just kept happening, and so yeah.
And it's one of the, I think, challenges for all of us in these kind of moments like she's experiencing of, she's trying to change her life from the old Nicole, and the old Nicole doesn't know how to do that. And so she needs the new Nicole that she's wanting to become in order to make that work, but she's not there yet. So it doesn't, yeah. But it's hard. I mean, I've been at this for 30 years and it never gets any easier. Those of us who want to live on the edge and do our thing, we sign up for this stuff and then we complain about it.
There's always a new edge.
I want to ask Nicole, are you sure you want this? You know what you're getting yourself into. I wouldn't have it any other way. But it's, as some of you said, it's not easy.
Geez, I felt like a massive belly laugh then.
It's so true, though. There's been so much change in my life. Why would I not want more?
Bring it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Michelle, when you were talking about being in the undercurrent, there is an undercurrent, and I was just thinking how you feel so sucked in when that undercurrent takes you. We were talking about that couple weeks ago even, and versus hovering above it. And the belly laughs kind of right above there, it's nice little laughing gas. Gives you a little bit of a chance to separate out of that.
Yeah.
Mm.
And you're right, David, we do complain about it.
What seems interesting to me is that we complain about trying new things and how hard they are. And we can laugh about it because we're taking risks and stretching ourselves. And the other percentage of people who aren't changed or looking for any change are also complaining because they don't have the guts to try something new, or they just complain about what the current is without realizing that they have to change. So we're all in, the world's
We're all complainers.
Imagine
Wow.
that.
Mm.
I also really just heard, I really appreciated Nicole's vulnerability about sharing that it's been a history of asking for what I need, but not really getting it. And that she didn't perceive that she got what she needed tonight for a bit. And she had asked clearly, and that she renamed that here. I just appreciated her saying what was true for her. That took guts too.
And I also will say, Karen, that I'm grateful that we could be with her and not try to rescue or fix her. I think we were very honoring of Nicole to just be Nicole and be in this difficult phase of her journey as she's experiencing it, and trust and offering that we will be there. We will find ways to support her, but so I guess I appreciate the maturity of the group, just to kind of hold that space for her, let it be what it was for her. And she shared some new things today she's not shared before. So hopefully that will be helpful to her.
It shifted from the immediacy to it will come.
Yeah.
And we are with you, and that space that was allowed. Thanks for naming that. I'm curious, Emily, is there anything in the case study you were going to share that's come out in today's conversation in a different way?
Yes. This morning when I shared it in a small group, one of the attendees asked me if I could discern what the difference was kind of in how I was before and how I've traveled over time on the other side of this experience. And a big part of that for me was around a deepening and personal maturity around doing this kind of thing, doing this kind of work, and owning it as an identity and who I am without, oh gosh, oftentimes I position myself in a place of contrarian. I'm always that person in my staff meetings who's like, but what about, have we considered, and oftentimes it's not that it's an unpopular opinion, it's just an opinion that's different and one that opens a new way of thinking or feeling or possibilities that might feel less productive because I'm raising more questions than I am answering them or getting to a fixing of a problem at that point. So to kind of rein it in, Karen, my journey with this work in this space, and particularly with sharing this case story, is a recognition of my own development and maturity as a person, not necessarily as a professional. How I can sit with myself in calm confidence. It's not an arrogance, but it's a feeling of truth. It's a feeling of okayness, enoughness, and one that allows me to feel less othered in recognition of it.
Wow. I have no other words. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. My ID journey was really at that self level. When I came in, I could very clearly see how I was doing it professionally and socially and in the organization where I worked. And it was just more so about the personal work that was before me, that I didn't know was before me. And that's the real difference.
I know we're at time, but I just want to share as one of the really lucky souls that got to witness Emily's sharing. It's spectacular. So
Thank you, Stephanie.
it's definitely an embodiment of ID in its most glorious way. So it'll be fun that everyone gets to experience it. It's beautiful. Really
I would
beautiful.
be grateful for another opportunity to share it in this space. So thank you.
Not to prolong this further, but I'll share with you, Emily, what I shared with Stephanie and Michelle about the writing of their case story. That it was less about having to summarize the entire project, which would take them years, but more about what were some key insights and lessons learned for them. So the key moments in the project that really illustrated ID or illustrated their own growth. And so I'm wondering if, maybe these end up being like a series of 3 or 4 recordings, each around a different theme from your project, or just because I think it will help us to maybe just in the moment. What I'm wondering is it will help us to keep the conversation more focused. So you kind of go deeper on key things that emerged for you, like your own, like how did you grow? Like what about that enabled you to grow, right? That might be an interesting question or an angle on the overall case story. And just something for us to think about as we, how do we do that? Yeah.
There are eddies in the river.
Yeah. Pull out, have it put up our feet, have a beer, and swap stories.
Exactly.
Whirl around and just enjoy it, and then just kind of meander on to the next one. Because Emily, you have so many potential eddies in your story.
Yeah. You could call it Meet You at the Eddy.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah. It's been a good day.
Yeah, good.
With being with all of you in this.
Shall we close, Emily?
Yeah, I do want to thank all of you for your time and your presence here tonight, and just for being a part of the lab community, and a part of what we're really trying to co-create and bring to life in this space. And so certainly all of you here are an integral part of that, and especially as those who are brave and courageous enough to be early adopters, and to offer your ideas and to offer your helping hands and your stories. This is how it will continue to grow and evolve into something that serves the needs and the desires and requests of those who show up. So.
Until next week.
Okay.
All right.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Be well. Thanks, Jessica, for coming.
Mhm.